A joint task force from the Ghana Traditional Council and the Accra Metropolitan Assembly earlier today clamped down on a dozen churches found flouting, the ban on drumming and noise making in some parts of the capital. The annual ban is instituted by the traditional leadership of Accra as part of preparations for the celebration of the city's Homo Festival. Let's have a conversation on the back of this, and joining me for details is the Public Relations Officer of the AMA, Gilbert Ni Ankra. Good evening, Gilbert. Welcome to the show. This was expected, but what more can you tell us from the operation today? Which churches flouted these regulations?
Thank you very much for the opportunity, and let me say a good evening to your cherished viewers and listeners all over the world. If you look at today's operation being, let me say, the first Sunday, the task force, the joint task force by the AMA and the Traditional Council, together with the police, embarked on an exercise to enforce the ban. Today, we were able to move around areas within the Bubuashin, Kaneshin, Udoko. We came to Dansoman. And if you look at what pertains in all the areas that we visited, in as much as most of the churches were not directly playing drums, or let me put it that way, a lot of the churches were using their keyboards, they were using their speakers. And so if you are even around the vicinity, you are on the streets closer to them, you can hear these voices coming out. You even heard some of the churches singing through these microphones, and they were loud enough. So as part of the enforcement, the team would have to ensure that their instruments they are using were confiscated and brought to the Traditional Council. So that was what happened today. And let me use this opportunity to also state that we want to appeal to churches to ensure that they adhere to the ban. Some will say that you have a congregation where the numbers are large enough, and even if you decide that you are not speaking through the speakers, nobody would hear. Fine, we understand some of these things, but they should ensure that the volumes are lowered down to the extent that if somebody is outside, the person would not be here. They should not also be singing through these speakers and microphones, and ensure that we all have a city where it will be peaceful.
Okay.
Gilbert,
from the videos, we see some confrontations. Was any form of violence used, or were you met with any form of violence?
Of course, we were. There were some of the areas where immediately you get there and you want to even enter into the churches, you find members resisting. But since our men were poised to ensure that they enforce the law, none of these churches came in our way in terms of preventing us. Some of the churches we also visited were also cautioned to ensure that they do the right thing. We went to a church, for instance, within Dansoman, and for that church, as I said, in as much as they were not playing the instruments, they were singing through the microphones. When we got there, there was some confrontation between the task force and members of the church, but there was some members around also to ensure that it did not result in any form of serious violence within them. Sure.
Did you seize any items, or did you make any arrests?
Of course, we seized a lot of items, and if you look at the videos and the pictures and all that, you would see that some speakers, mixers, microphones and all that. But as I said, we did not carry anything in relation to drums and all that, because none of the churches were really using their drums.
So which areas will the task force visit next?
As I said, the task force, they are working 24/7. So they are moving all over. For instance, for today, we did not have any specific area to move in. there are also instances where you have some individuals calling in to personally report some of these noise making within their vicinity, and we move in. But the task force are all over, and anytime we hear any of these things, we get the feedback, we move in. But they are also patrolling to ensure that there is some level of the noise are minimized within this period.
So what happens to the items that were seized and the people that were arrested?
Of course, if you look at what happened traditionally when they see some of these items, the offenders are expected to pay a fine to the traditional council, after which the items would be released to them.
Okay. Any advice to the public before you go?
Just as I said, this is a 1 month period, and we are all Christians. We are all affected one way or the other, because as we know, if you go to church without instruments, you will not be able to do what you want to do well. We all know how it plays an important role. But this is a 1 month period. I want to urge all of us to ensure that we adhere to this ban. Let me state briefly that if you look at our Muslim brothers, one challenge that we have, and let me state it categorically here, and they should desist from using their speakers, especially doing their dawn prayers, their Friday prayers. Please, they should understand that within this period, there are some rules and regulations, especially with respect to tradition, and that is being adhered to. So they should also ensure that they are here. They should not be using their horns, especially doing for calling for prayers during dawn and then on Fridays.
Okay, now that you brought the issue of Muslims lowering their speakers, is it that you found them also flouting the rules? Today
had been Sunday. We have not seen any yet, but we've had some reports of especially the call for prayers, using their horns to call for prayers and all that. And it's on that basis that I am saying that they should ensure that they desist for it before the task force moving to enforce the law.
Gilbert Ni Ankra, thank you very much. He is the PRO at the Accra Metropolitan Assembly.
About to